Hey everyone, I just deployed my first AI agent. And the first AI agent I'm deploying is a Kobe bot that's going to be giving me motivational Kobe quotes like every 8 a.m. for pretty much the rest of my life. This thing is just going to be running until AWS shuts down. So, yeah, I'm just excited that I was able to get this Kobe bot out because if you probably seen in my last video, I was kind of struggling with it. And I was able to get this out while wearing a Kobe shirt. And I'm also going back to LA for the second time this month, so rest in peace, Kobe. I have this AI running that's going to be motivating me every single morning, sending me Kobe quotes 8 a.m. Pacific time. And I'll show you exactly how I did all this, like how I got this AI agent running for me and why this AI agent will just keep running for me for pretty much eternity. So let's see. Where this is kind of the infrastructure right here. So right now I have a cron job or a AWS event. What is this called specifically? I think it's AWS trigger applications. Sorry, let me get this is my Kobe bot event bridge CloudWatch event. So I have this CloudWatch event that triggers every day at 8 a.m. It triggers every day at 8 a.m. and it calls this serverless Lambda function. I'll explain what all this is. What serverless Lambda function does is it's like a different pattern or paradigm than renting out a server. Instead, all you have to do is define your function, and I defined this Kobe bot here. And yeah, this is my Kobe bot here. So I pretty much just define that function. Instead of renting a server, I can just deploy that function onto AWS Lambda and then set it up so that every 8 a.m. I can run my Lambda function. And how Lambda works is it'll find a random server to run your function on. So it'll find like any server that they have in AWS. It'll take my function. It'll take all the dependencies that I specified, which is SendGrid for sending emails and OpenAI for calling like the model and generate like using the LLM, and it will pull in your dependencies, pull in your code, and then actually just run your code on a server. And when it's done running your code, it just stops. So you pretty much only have to pay for like the time it takes to execute your function, and you don't have to pay 24/7 for a server, which is the best for my case because I only want Kobe to be talking to me every day at 8 a.m. I don't need Kobe running like awake 24/7 sending me motivational quotes or just being even awake 24/7 just to send me quotes every 8 a.m. That's not a good use of servers. And yeah, I heard that AI electricity is already messing up the grid, so I just want to be as efficient as possible. So let's just look at the code. I think the code is pretty much this. This is that Lambda function that I was talking about that's gonna run every day at 8 a.m. So what it does is it calls into this AI model, and I'm just using ChatGPT right now, and I'm telling the AI model that it's a Kobe Bryant bot that will generate me Kobe quotes on demand, make it unique. It should not be this specific one because before I added this, it was literally saying the same exact one every time, and then I said sign it with Kobe Bryant. I don't know if that's plagiarism, but I hope not. And then please avoid following, or please follow these strictly. Avoid saying anything else but the quote. Because sometimes it'll be like, here's this quote. No, I just want the straight up quote. And then I'll pretty much go like, give me the Kobe quote, please, right? And I call the GPT API like this, and that returns. And finally, I send the email, and you can see I'm getting an email right here. Yep, getting email right there. That's from Kobe. Cool. What else? Yeah, that's like my little Kobe bot. What else is happening here is that, so I don't want to click on the API keys. What it's going to do is it's going to generate that Kobe quote, and I use SendGrid in order to send me an email. And I pretty much just like, you could just on SendGrid, it's pretty easy. SendGrid is owned by Twilio. And what essentially do is you choose like the email you want to send from, and then you choose like a list of emails that you want to send to, and then you just choose the subject and the HTML content, and then you go ahead and send that API call. And then I return Mamba out, right? So that's my Lambda function. But one thing is, there's two ways to define Lambda functions. You can either like go on the AWS console right here and create your functions. Like you can go through this form here and actually create your function, choose like the runtime, all that, and then actually upload your code. But now you have to manage all of your AI agents using the console. So instead, you could use a different concept called infrastructure as code, where you define your infrastructure in your code, and then you could just deploy your infrastructure from your Python code or from your terminal instead of using this UI. So it's pretty cool. Right here, I define my serverless YAML, where I kind of define my infrastructure here. And in this serverless YAML, you can pretty much define anything. You can just define like EC2 instances, databases, whatever you want to create in AWS. You kind of just define it here. I just want to create a few Lambda functions, so I just say functions. I give the Lambda function a name, and I point it to where the piece of code that it should run. I also pass in a schedule for how often it should run. And then finally, I pass in the layers, which is the dependencies. And I'll explain, like, it's pretty annoying to get dependencies. This step over here of getting dependencies into, because when it runs a Lambda, it needs dependencies. Getting the dependencies onto your Lambda function was kind of annoying, but I have like step by step on how to do that. So where was I? Yeah, you pretty much define all your infrastructure here. And then all I literally need to do is like do serverless deploy. Oh, server, spelled that wrong. Serverless deploy. And you could see that like now it's pretty much reading this here. And it's figuring out like what Lambda functions do I need to create. And then it's taking my Lambda functions and also taking the code that I defined here and pushing that to AWS. It's pretty good. Look, it says no changes to deploy. Let me make a quick change. Mamba out. I'll put another question mark or another exclamation mark here. Right? And then I'll quickly go to one of my Lambda functions. And you could see that here it's only one exclamation mark. But once I deploy it from my code here, you'll see that it'll be three exclamation marks. Exclamation, sorry. Yeah, and I could define the cron job. Like if I wanted the cron job to send me, make sure those are closed. If I wanted to change like the schedule of the cron job, pretend I want it every 9 a.m. I just change it here and I just do serverless deploy, and it'll deploy this updated Lambda function. And in my other projects, I actually have like a GitHub action that when you push the GitHub main, it just deploys your Lambda functions. So it's always continuously updated, and that's completely automated. And I'll do that with these AI agents at some point. So yeah, so the key concepts I think you just need to remember there is like we're defining infrastructure as code. So using code, we're defining how our AWS is supposed to operate. And then it also will push up the code that we need there. So yeah, I like to use this serverless framework. This is one of my favorite frameworks. It's like different than using Terraform or different than using like CloudFormation. There's a lot of different infrastructure as code, but I just got used to using serverless, but all the other ones aren't too much harder to use. So yeah, so now if I want to even define more AI agents, I'm probably by the end of the year, I'm going to have 100 of these AI agents working for me on various tasks. I just need to make new functions like this and give them different names and call into different functions and probably choose different schedules. And if they need different dependencies, choose different layers. but I'm gonna have like 100 of these AI agents working for me. So just subscribe if you want to see me slowly build up my AI company. I want to have I want to employ about 100 AI employees by the end of the year. And then what else? Cool. Let's see. So now you kind of understand what infrastructure as code is, and this is from GPT itself. It's talking about like what infrastructure as code is. Infrastructure as code is a practice in modern software development and IT operations where infrastructure such as servers, networks, storage are provisioned, managed, and configured using code instead of manual process or interactive configurations tools. So basically, instead of using a UI, you just write everything in code. And that's just like, for me, I just like that a lot more because I just push to GitHub, make changes here, push to GitHub, and I never have to open up AWS.com unless I want to check my bill. So cool. This should have deployed by now. And you can see, I'll just reload this page. You can see now it has 3 exclamation marks. And cool. So like I said, you need to define the dependencies here. And I found that pretty annoying to do. I was complaining about that in one of my last videos. But I figured out these simple steps in order to get your dependencies into a Lambda function and like put into a Lambda layer. So I think the first thing you should do is when you build your dependencies, build them inside of a Docker image. Because if you just build them on your computer, it doesn't like build them correctly. You need to build them in the same environment that the Lambda function is going to be running in. So if a Lambda function is using an ARM64 processor and you're using an M3 MacBook and you build the dependencies, those dependencies are going to be slightly different, like the binaries for those specific dependencies. So make sure you run them in a Docker container. So that's this right here. I'm running in a Docker. I start up a Docker container with ARM64 processor. I update the system and install like zip, install Python, and stuff like that. Then I create a directory where I'm going to store all the packages for my Lambda function. Then I set up a requirements.txt and I define pretty much SendGrid and OpenAI, which are the two processors that I want to use, or sorry, which are the two packages I want to use. And then lastly, what I do is I install all my packages into the site packages. And then I do like I clean up some of those files so that the package isn't too big. And then finally, like once I have all of my packages and site packages, I create a zip file, right? Then you pretty much go in here and you can create layers like this. You create layers and upload the zip file. Once you finish creating the layer, it should give you a ARN, which is like Amazon Resource Network, or Amazon, what's an ARN again? It's like a unique identifier. ARN. Okay, Amazon Resource Name. It's a unique identifier. And then and then once that, like the dependencies have a unique identifier, you pretty much just go in here and you just like specify. So it specifies that unique dependency layer. Yeah, that's pretty much all you need to do. And then literally, let's just like, now at every 8 a.m., it's pretty much going to run, but in this UI, I could run it myself. Run that. Mamba out. And let's see. Let's see what motivational quote it gave. It might take a second. Let me see. I'll probably finish the video with that once. It takes a bit to go through. Let's see. What was I going to talk about? So, yeah. We're using serverless to manage the infrastructure. To reiterate, 8 a.m. we have a CloudWatch event that will kick off the Lambda function. The Lambda function is going to find a server to run on. When it finds a server to run on, it's going to pull in the code. It's going to pull in the dependencies using Lambda layers. And then once it pulls in the code in the Lambda layers, it's going to execute my Kobe bot. And the Kobe bot makes calls to OpenAI's APIs. So it's also doing that. And it's also actually making calls to SendGrid APIs. I didn't write that there. But pretty much in this function, you can do anything you would do in a regular Python function, like call any APIs, do anything you want to, call any different libraries. You just need to make sure you add those specific libraries in the Lambda layer. And yeah, pretty much once you get that, that's my first bot, and that's my first AI agent that's deployed to the cloud. It's gonna run for the end of time, and I think just the key takeaways from this video would probably be just like infrastructure as code is really powerful because it allows you to just not like be messing around in the UI, which gets annoying. And then you could automate a lot of things. Learn about AWS Lambda and figure out like why it's different than EC2. Learn a little bit about serverless computing, and then also dependencies are annoying to get into Lambda, but use AWS layers to do that, and make sure you build your dependencies using a Docker image so that they are like the right dependencies for the Lambda functions. Because the Lambda functions run on an ARM64 processor, you want to build your dependencies using the same processor. With that being said, let me reload my email. What's that? What's going on? I'm gonna spam it until it goes. I need my Kobe quote by the end of this video. There you go. And we're finishing it off with Kobe's quote: "Great things come from hard work and perseverance. No excuses." Kobe Bryant. All right. See y'all in the next video, and I hope you learned something. Peace.